What if I told you that one of the most impressive warships in the Rebel Alliance military was an 120-meter long frigate? Today we'll be talking about the Corellian gunship, which served successfully in the Alliance's military, and which clearly served as the inspiration for many successful ship designs. Before we get in that though, today's video is sponsored by my friends over at Ramen. It's January 2nd. You've probably made New Year's resolutions, maybe to eat better or to order less fast food. Ramen is simple. High quality food, low sodium, lots of bioavailable nutrients, and a lot more convenient than ordering out. Ramen is a small American company, and they've been supporting my channel for several years now. You can feel good about buying for them, not only for that reason, but also because they pay their employees a living wage and are just cool people. A lot of you have been asking about when my custom flavor, Massaman Curry, will be returning to stock. I can tell you very soon, and it will be the biggest wave yet. In the meantime, there are a ton of variety packs, so you can find another flavor you like, and if that sounds appealing, you can use code Eckhart at the link below to get 10% off your order. Anyway, let's talk Star Wars, and we're looking at the ship originally called, in Star Wars lore, the Corellian gunship, which would later get the designation the DP-20. It probably won't surprise you to learn that the DP-20 comes from original Star Wars concept art, and I think that's partially why it fits that OT design aesthetic so nicely. It's got the same genesis as the Blockade, where it was originally envisioned perhaps as a good guy ship, the Millennium Falcon, before being envisioned as the Blockade Runner, although in the end the role would of course go to the CR-90. However, the design similarities make a lot of sense in universe because both the CR-90 and the DP-20 are Corellian designed vessels. The DP-20, however, is very unique in that it's one of the few purpose-built Corellian warships. I did a video last year, I believe, on why Corellians may have been the best shipbuilders in the galaxy. So unsurprisingly, when they set out to build a pure warship, it worked really well. We'll get back to that in a second, but the Corellian gunship was brought into lore pretty early. It appears in issue 12 from the original Marvel comic run of 1977, which is unsurprising given that that comic relied heavily on concept art and was largely made before the movie came out. One thing that I like about the comic is that there are several scenes where there are various Corellian-looking ships shown to be a part of the Rebel Alliance. This scene, for example, has what looks to be DP-20s and things that are in between that and Corvette sized. Anyway, the ship first got its lore in the Rebel Alliance sourcebook, and it states, as I said, that the Corellian gunship differed from its slightly larger cousin, the CR-90, in that it's got almost no storage space, with its engines taking up almost half of the ship's area, and the remainder being taken up by shielding and gunnery stations. There's actually an RPG sourcebook called the ISIS Coordinates, which gives a full deck plan of the DP-20, and it holds to this concept pretty faithfully. If you look, pretty much the entire ship is sensor suites, gunnery control stations, the actual turbo lasers themselves, and the engine. One thing I will note is that this diagram calls every one of the weapons a turbo laser. That's often just how sourcebooks treated Star Wars ship-based weapons back then. The Star Wars sourcebook, however, gives it 8 double turbo lasers, 6 quad laser cannons, and 4 concussion missile tubes. That is a lot. Quad laser cannons are great at screening against enemy starfighters, while the turbo lasers allow the DP-20, especially with its maneuverability and very powerful engines, to inflict damage on even larger capital ships. The way the sourcebook describes the DP-20 is almost like a moving flak screen. When the ship is working at its optimal efficiency, the gunners can, and I quote, surround the ship with a nearly impenetrable barrier of laser fire, doing real damage to any starfighter or squadrons who dare attack. However, there's a big caveat. Notice I said when operating efficiently. Like many starships in Star Wars, the guns are manually operated on the DP-20. So there's no computer optimizing how the ship is firing, and an untrained crew is not going to be able to use the ship's many weapons successfully. And ideally, you're not talking about just one DP-20. Corellian gunships worked really well in swarms. Individually, a single DP-20 is going to suffer at the hands of a larger capital ship. It's just not large enough or powerful enough to survive sustained fire. But with speed, maneuverability, and multiple ships, and of course good communication, you can make it so that no single DP-20 is taking fire for too long while still doing damage with your turbo lasers and concussion missiles. Obviously, DP-20s also worked very well in an escort role, protecting larger capital ships. Rebel starfighters already do that job pretty well, but with the DP-20, you can help ensure that you really have the advantage in that your capital ships are safe from bombers. One interesting bit of lore in the Starships of the Galaxy guidebook, which may seem obvious but is probably worth repeating, thing is the fact that Corellian gunship informally didn't just refer to the DP-20, but also captured other small Corellian ships. That's sort of a nice explanation for that Rebel fleet we see in the Marvel Star Wars comics. The book also mentions that the DP-20, again, not used for cargo purposes. That's actually somewhat of a downside, as I've covered in a prior video. One of the reasons the Corellian Corvette was so successful for the Rebels is because it was an extremely common cargo vessel, and there's sort of a plausible deniability there. I'm not a rebel. Sure, I'm using their most common ship, but so do lots of people. The DP-20, on the other hand, was only really used by the Rebel Alliance, select planetary militias, and pirates. According to the Starships of the Galaxy guide, the DP-20 was used until the Yuuzhan Vong War. You can definitely see its bones in the vessel that likely replaced it, the Ranger-class gunship. That was a small, fast Corellian ship armed to the gills with laser cannons, but probably with more of an anti-starfighter role rather than this sort of hybrid role of the DP-20. But guys, that's all I've got for today. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any thoughts down below, and I'll see you next time.